Welcome to this edition of Backstage Pass with Lia Chang. I'm your host, Lia Chang. Today, I'm sitting down with multi-hyphenate Howard Ho, an award-winning songwriter, lyricist, and playwright, to talk about his new short play, Beethoven's Third, that is going to be part of the Samuel French Off-Broadway Short Play Festival.
Yeah, that's a lot of words, yeah, but you're correct.
So I understand, well, first of all, welcome to the show,
Thank
Howard.
you.
I'm so glad that we finally have the chance to sit down and have a chat.
Absolutely, I've been looking forward to this.
And on this beautiful summer day at FIOS. Tell me about Beethoven's Third.
Well, Beethoven's Third came out of a prompt from Playground New York, which is this playwriting incubator where a bunch of playwrights get a prompt every month, and then you have to produce like a 10-minute play, and then some of those plays get chosen to have stage readings. So this one wasn't chosen, but I always believed in it. I always thought like this is really good, and the prompt was origin story.
Okay.
And I'm a musicologist. I studied musicology at UCLA. And one of the great origin stories that I'm aware of is Beethoven sort of becoming Beethoven. He was sort of, like an average composer before, but he's really sort of stepped into his own in this one moment where he was starting to become deaf and was contemplating suicide because, what life is there for a deaf composer, right?
Right.
But then he thought more about it and thought, he wrote this letter to his brother saying like, I'm gonna commit suicide, but then didn't send the letter and instead said, you know what, I'm gonna go on a new path where I'm gonna live to write music, even though I can't hear it, but this is what God has sent me here to do. And that's when his music completely changed into like not following rules, not sort of fitting into the cookie cutter compositional style that was there before. And that kind of kicked off like the Romantic era and everybody wanting to basically be like Beethoven and carve their own path. So to me it was like, oh, I want to look at that moment. But what it eventually turned into was this satire about the artistic process and how a lot of artists today cannot get their work done because we're still producing Beethoven. So like all the classical orchestras around the world, they're still playing Beethoven.
Right.
Meanwhile, there's new composers, there's new demographics that haven't had a voice on the concert hall stage, and they're fighting with Beethoven. So in this play, I've imagined a scenario of 500 years or 300 years actually into the future, where they're cloning Beethovens because instead of giving new composers a chance, they want to just clone Beethoven so that they can have new works by Beethoven. And it's this like it's completely absurd, but you hear people like Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos say, oh, we need to have more population because then there's more Mozarts that could develop. And you just look at that, you're like, oh, like they're still like talking about Mozart and still wanting it to be like very status quo. And like, what about the people? There's like Mozarts today, like you could support them, but instead, no, we have to support the past or whatever. So, and don't get me wrong, I love Beethoven, I love Mozart. Like it's not against that at all, but it's also about like, we have to recognize like the new innovators today,
right.
So that, especially because, I have one character in the play who's an Asian American composer, and they're like, I'm Asian Beethoven, but like nobody recognizes me as such because I have this like different look and different style, but I'm just as, as valid as anyone else. And so it's just like a weird way of confronting this need to like fit in with the artistic paradigm.
Right. Now this is the third time that you're part of this particular festival. What has drawn you to this particular program?
Well, it is kind of the preeminent place for short plays, which is incredible because a lot of times you just write these short plays and they'll get done locally and it's great. That's where I started, really.
Right.
But with Samuel French, because they are this national or international organization, there's a chance that you could get published if there's like judges at each performance, and they score it or they advance the different pieces. So I'll just lay it out. There were 850 submissions to Samuel French. 30 of those became the finalists.
So you're in the 30.
I'm in the 30. Of those 30, I think something like 15 or 12 will make it to another round, where then 6 of those, maybe 6 to 8 of those will get published. I mean, it put my work in a little bit more of a national conversation. So one of my pieces is the first year was a musical, and that musical went on to get published, not through Samuel French, through another group. And then now it's being licensed through MTI, which is like the big music licensor.
What is it called?
That one was called End of the Line. I co-wrote that with Chris Edgar and Kristen Ray, and it's about a bunch of ants who are trying to find the long-lost Twinkie. and so every year I get these royalty checks from like different high schools, like you just imagine like kids like playing these ants, and it's just so adorable, like the ant costumes, like sometimes I see them, and it's just the biggest joy of my life. And that's like one of my most successful pieces, was like this short musical. The second piece, which was just last year, was actually an autobiographical piece. So this was like a very different piece for me as well, where the main character is named Howard, that's me. But it was about my growing up and going through high school and sort of like being between cultures.
I remember you telling me a little bit about it before you went out to do it.
Yeah, right? Yeah. No, it's a very important piece to me, because now I'm expanding it into a full-length musical. Where I'm From is the name of the play. And it's kind of a play off of, you always get asked, like, where are you from? But in this show, Where I'm From is sort of about where I'm from, which is this place called the San Gabriel Valley in Los Angeles. It's an Asian American enclave.
Sure.
And so I actually grew up as like part of the majority, like not every Asian American gets to say that, right? But I was the majority where I grew up. But culturally, like I didn't see myself on TV or in the movies, or hear myself on the radio, and so there was a disconnect where like all my friends were Asian, but like none of the media was Asian or had any.
You still felt invisible, even though you were fully represented in person.
Exactly. And I think that created a sort of cognitive dissonance.
Yeah.
That what we ended up doing was fusing the cultures.
Right.
You would take the sort of music, R&B, rap, grunge, whatever it was, you would take that music, you would combine it with, we're also like hanging out with a lot of like Latino people, because Southern California, and so we would like speak like Mexicans while like listening to music sung by Black artists,
right?
Watching TV, featuring whatever white or whatever mainstream thing was mainstream. And in the play, I talk about how, like, we had Margaret Cho, All-American Girl, which came out, when I was in high school, and I was like, I have to watch this, and it wasn't even like about me. It was like it was Korean, but it was just like the only
Asian
chance.
faces on TV.
It was the only chance I had, right? Or Joy Luck Club, which is another big one. So to me, it was like those were like the little islands of like representation and edit.
So where was this produced?
So Where I'm From was originally set to be produced in LA at this theater called Company of Angels, where I've done short play festivals with them for many years. Unfortunately, the pandemic happened while we were in the middle, like right before tech, and so we weren't able to fully produce that. But I then took it to Center Theater Group, which is one of the
biggest.
It's the biggest theater, nonprofit theater in LA.
Are you friends with Snehal?
I'm friends with Snehal, who now runs CTG.
Snehal, are you listening?
Snehal produced. No, I'm just kidding. No, but at the time, Snehal was not the artistic director.
Right, he was at East West Place.
Yeah, but part of a Center Theater Group was they had this thing called the Community Stories. You can actually go on the Center Theater Group website and still see Where I'm From in their Community Stories page. Things where now I want to expand it to full length. and I want to make it into a musical, which it wasn't necessarily a musical before, but to me it's all wrapped up in music, because I think in a weird way, what I was talking about earlier, like we were listening to music by these black artists, and yet we're not hearing, sort of the Asian American perspective, so we kind of like adopt these different styles that we're
we
hearing.
don't necessarily know what the Asian American perspective experience is, because it depends on generational,
Yes. Absolutely.
where you went to school, who you hung out with.
No, and so we created our own little culture, and so it's kind of, I think the music really represents that in a really strong way, because I grew up in the 90s, so it was like gangster rap, it was R&B, it was like boy bands, but before NSYNC and Backstreet Boys, they were all black boy bands. They were
Right.
Boys to Men, Blackstreet, stuff like that. So to me, it was always like, that's like the era that I'm always nostalgic about, that I think a lot of other people can relate to. It was really the beginning, I think, in some ways, of Asian American aesthetics, because you'll see people now referencing San Gabriel Valley as like the hub of Asian American culture, which it's still going strong. SGV was not cool when I was there, but now it's like the place to be. Yes. So YouTube started. I just said I'm going to be a YouTube musician. I've watched a lot of videos. I can do that. So I started doing piano cover videos, and they were pretty modest. I did like a hip hop piano cover and TV theme song, and it was just like random stuff.
And what year was this?
That was 2016.
Okay.
And and it was kind of slow going. Like, it wasn't really catching on. And then this little show called Hamilton came out, and I said, "Oh, I'm like a huge fan." Like I knew it was coming before, because I had known about the White House performance, and so I was like, this thing is coming. And so right away I learned how to play that opening number on piano.
Oh.
And there was no sheet music, so I was all by ear.
Oh.
And I said, you know what? I can play this by
You're
ear.
a fancy Dan.
Yeah. So no one else has done this. Well, people had done covers, but not where they're playing piano.
Not in this way.
So I'm going to do my own arrangement. I'm going to sing with it. And so I did this piano cover, and I got a little bit more attention, which is great. But then I took it a step further, where you're constantly refining. And I said, well, I've developed my own arrangement of it. I can teach people to play this arrangement. I can kind of become this tutor for.
And again, before sheet music.
Again, before the sheet music. So I thought, I just started doing. I did this long tutorial. I covered all the different bits of it, and then that got even more attention. And then what I noticed as I was doing that is, as I was playing, teaching how to play it, I said, you know what? What I'm teaching actually is this musical motif, has a meaning.
Yeah.
And in musicology, they call that leitmotif, where there's repeated chord progressions, repeated melodies. And I said, you know what? I can actually talk about that, and I could actually teach people to play the entire show just based off of these leitmotifs.
So this YouTube show / channel that you created was very unique unto you.
Absolutely.
In terms of what you were able to provide and also gain, right?
Yeah.
Pardon me.
Bless you. Yeah, because, I literally thought the musicology degree was useless. I was like, oh, it was a nice thing to study, but how can I use it? But now I had a use for it. I said, you know what? I'm the only person who has this training, who also loves this show, who also loves, the things it's based on, like hip hop and musical theater. And so I sort of just combined that all and started this series called How Hamilton Works, where I would analyze all the different motifs in the show musically and tell people how it works, how it changes throughout the show and creates this amazing story arc. And I've done, I want to say, at least a dozen of those videos, if not more, and it became my most popular series.
So today, your YouTube channel has how many followers?
I know, I'm like, there's so many. It's 126,000 as of today, 126,000
Okay.
subscribers. So I did get my like, silver play plaque. And so yeah, it's a wonderful moment of like recognition, like, oh, what I'm doing is actually connecting. But of course, Hamilton, wasn't where I left it. Like I went on to also talk about
Other chapters, right? Other chapters of other
shows,
or
other songs, movies. So I've just become kind of a YouTube musicologist.
And how did you get the attention of the creator of Hamilton?
Oh my gosh. So, I would do these videos every so often, and Lin-Manuel Miranda started sharing them. And I literally had no connection to him, no connection to the show, but he just said, like, oh, this guy, he's on point, he never misses, like, you should watch it. Later on, he said one of my videos made him cry. It's just like,
wow,
like it's the best. And like after he did that, the videos took off even more. Then the Disney Plus, sort of pro shot version came out, and that pushed the videos out even more. So it was just incredible luck to have the support of Lin, have that kind of push, like be involved in a show that's so popular and kind of ride that wave. And now I'm just riding the wave of all these other shows that I love. I get to, like, my most recent video is about Six.
Okay.
Which, I got to interview
Jasmine
Forsberg, so I was kind of doing what you do, right? Like doing an interview, but I was doing it through the lens of music.
Sure.
And to me, it was the great joy. Like I even demonstrated some of the music for Jasmine, and like blew her mind on the spot. It's like, oh my gosh, it's like, what an amazing joy to be so connected now to Broadway. So for context, I started the channel back when I was in LA, and I had even less connection to Broadway. Now I live in Midtown, live in the theater district. So.
And you are often at Broadway openings.
Occasionally, I wouldn't say like it happens. I've sort of deepened those ties to different performers and different artists in the Broadway community. And especially through my YouTube channel, where I get to talk to them and talk about their work,
right.
Celebrate it, teach the next generation. I found out from John Hoche,
I love John Hoche.
And a great actor, puppeteer, who said on my Instagram, he's like, I recommend your videos to writers all the time to like teach writing. I'm like, oh my gosh, like I cannot believe this. Like I am helping to bring forth new works potentially.
So in the last year, you've had 2 other new plays, Reset and Parody, and you mentioned that you've been doing a lot of science-based plays. So can we talk about that?
Yeah, so I was not a good science student. I think I got like a C in physics and, failed the AP physics.
You tried.
I tried. I really did try, but it was not computing.
That didn't compute for me either.
You need like a really good teacher or, homeschooling or tutoring or something. Anyway, I didn't have that. But what I did have is just curiosity. And so I had this idea to create like a quantum physics play, which I don't know anything about quantum physics, but there's concepts in it that really fascinate me.
Right.
And just like they're ripe for storytelling. And so I created this play about a quantum physics experiment where a man is able to meet his future self, or future selves, I should say, because there's 4 different future selves that he meets. And so it's just like a fascinating premise that I'm like, well, what is it going to be about? What is it going to be about? And then, this was also pandemic year. And then, so it became my pandemic play, infused with all the sort of fears and sort of anxieties. And it's a very dark play. It's one of my darkest pieces.
And this is Reset.
And it's called Reset.
Which you also did the sound design for.
I'm also a sound designer, so I was doing rewrites, on reset during the day, and then at night I would have to go in and sound design, and
Oh my God.
my brain was exploding. But the play happened. It was at Moving Arts last year, 2023. We had a full production. One of my actors won an award for like breakout lead
Wow.
performer, so it was very exciting. And the play is going to be published with Backstage Pass
Cool.
later this year. So, it's like all around, it's like an amazing experience.
So from Reset, you went to Parody. That was part of Pan Asian Rep's New Works.
Pan Asian Rep's New Works, so they have this New Works festival every year, and anyone can submit a work, even people all over the country. And so I said, well, I have this topic that I want to write about, and I had written a short play version of this play that I called Jie, which means.
I know it. But you can tell them.
So it means older sister in Mandarin Chinese, but it's called that because Oppenheimer, the famous physicist who created the atom bomb, he called this Chinese American woman physicist who was a colleague of his, he called her Jie out of respect. And so I wrote this short play about her. Her name was Wu Jiansheng, or in sort of Romanized, it's like Chen Sheng Wu.
All the famous physicists of that time knew me. Like when Fermi couldn't get his nuclear fission reaction going, all his friends told him, ask Miss Wu. So I had to be the one to tell him, yeah, it's a xenon contamination collapsing the reaction. Anyone can see that.
So what does it mean to you to be an Asian American theater maker in this time?
Wow, yeah, I think there still is a lot of responsibility, a feeling that, representation is still not what it should be or could be. I think to me, I feel enormous responsibility, like I said earlier, to tell the stories of Asian Americans, Wu Jiansheng, right? Like where I'm from, my Asian American enclave. At the same time, I feel an enormous responsibility to provide opportunities for my fellow Asian American actors and artists where we can cast them in shows where they get to play fully three-dimensional characters, where they don't have to be a stereotype, where they can break through a certain stereotype. And I think in a certain way, because I also write a lot of musicals, that there haven't been as many Asian American musicals as there should be. We have Allegiance, and when I say Asian American, I mean like by Asian Americans. So we have the Rodgers and Hammerstein, we have Miss Saigon. Those are separate, but we have Allegiance, which is by and for Asian Americans. We have, Timothy Wong's work.
Gold Mountain.
Jason Ma. Oh my gosh, when I met Jason Ma, I lost my mind. I'm like Gold Mountain was, I didn't even see the whole thing, but I saw a workshop of it. I was like this blew my mind. I didn't know that this could exist, right? And so just being able to contribute to that kind of legacy, I think to me is very important, and to find the musical language of Asian Americans. Like I said, we had to fuse, what we had available here. Right.
Well, I grew up in R&B and jazz, and the Beatles.
We'll talk about sound design.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, so you did sound design on Reset,
yeah.
But you've actually been a sound designer for how many years?
Over 10 years now, and it sort of was a career that I could start because sound design is really in demand. There's not that many sound designers. There's a lot of actors, right? There's not that many sound designers. So I had a specific skill set from my time as a composer. I studied music, like I said. But then.
So your musicology.
Yeah. Yes.
It really came in handy.
Absolutely.
For the paths that you chose.
Yeah, lucky me. I did not plan that at all. I literally thought okay, musicology is just for academia. I'm never going to use it. But lo and behold, my YouTube career, my sound design career, composition.
Well, that makes you uniquely you, though.
Yes.
Not everybody has a degree in musicology, is what I mean when I say that.
Absolutely,
right?
Yeah. The way I view it is that we're all good at many different things, And sometimes we close ourselves off to like focus on being good at one thing, whatever
Well,
that job
that's
is.
only if somebody is trying to give you that kind of pressure.
Yes, and there are people. There's like societal pressure. Like, who are you? Like, you know, how are you going to make a name for yourself? And so, in a way, I didn't want to close myself off from those things, and so I've always pursued music, always pursued writing, always pursued sort of just talking about music. I was also a journalist, so I relate to you on that level as well. But to me, it was like, that's what makes you unique. You know, like there's a lot of YouTubers out there. There's very few that actually have a musicology degree and who love musical theater and have composed musicals and know about that process. So to me, that is what makes you special. And you know, the idea that I get to sound design my own writing is amazing.
It's a really big deal.
Yeah.
It speaks to the level of control that you have artistically.
Yeah, like and
You don't
know,
have to ask somebody else's opinion.
Well-
But yourself.
Well, but theater also is about collaboration.
Yeah.
And one of the things, like, eventually I want to be like so, you know, like so advanced in my career that like, oh, I'm gonna hire a sound designer and like I'll hand off the reins and.
Well,
and
sure. I would
Yeah.
love to one day be able to have somebody else editing everything or shooting everything.
You
and I can
edit
just
it all yourself?
I do.
Oh my
I
God.
could just be the talent,
Yeah.
but there's the control factor.
Right. Well, and to be honest, like I haven't stopped being a sound designer, and you know, so and I think I've always liked sound design in the way that it gave me a chance to meet people, to be in the room with people. I've worked with incredible directors, you know, like Tim Dang. You know, I've worked with Snehal as a director, which is another way I know him. But you know, I'll get to be in the room here in New York with you know, actors and a director, and to me that's so exciting to be part of the community, not just as a fan, not just as somebody who talks about shows, but who's actually, you know, working on a show. All right, yeah. So Beethoven's Third, it will be at the Samuel French, off Broadway Short Play Festival, August 13th, which I think is a Tuesday, 6:30 p.m. There may be an encore performance on the 17th, so we're gonna have to wait and see.
And it's at the Vineyard Theater, isn't it?
It's at the Vineyard Theater near Union Square.
Thank you for joining me for this edition of Backstage Pass with Lia Chang. Until next time.